Hi, folks. This is Mark Smith with Family Tree Brand Life Coaches. The reason I'm going live today from my sacred place in my backyard is it's just easier to upload. So again, I'm not going to be dialoguing a lot with people. If you pop onto the show, you're welcome to pop on and talk to each other, and I'll probably say hi to some of you if I see your names, but I'm going to try to sort of stick to the script here. I'm going to be speaking today on a topic called the agony of the lonely lost child. Smooth and chunky music lover Deborah. Hey, Deb. See, there I go squirreling. So today I shared on Tuesday night in the live stream that I wasn't in a very good place in terms of my self-care. So today, hi Vanna and Ellie, I carved out like 4 or 5 hours, and I got a good workout in, got a good sweat up. Oh man, that really can shift your chemicals in your body to get a good workout. And I've just been hanging out here in my sacred place, and I just felt inspired. I just felt inspiration tapping me on the shoulder. Hi from Los Angeles. Actually, I think it was somebody on the live stream asked me to do a video on the lost child. I think is actually what happened. So, but there were several other things where inspiration sort of tapped me on the shoulder. And one of them is I happen to be working right now with a couple of really classic lost children. And I got permission from, Vancouver, how you doing? Kate Nadine. I got permission from both of them to share their stories, part of their stories. Another thing where inspiration was tapping me on the shoulder is Brene Brown's new book called Braving the Wilderness. I've been listening to it. The rest of the title is The Quest for True Belonging and the Courage to Stand Alone. And listening to her stuff just brought up a lot of lost child stuff in me. So y'all keep talking to each other, but hey Andy. So I'm going to get into the material. Love you guys. So what I'm going to actually do, I'm going to start by reading this book that I mentioned to you guys, Another Chance by Sharon Wegscheider Cruse. And I've shared with you guys that this is my very favorite book of all time. It's my favorite book. I love this book. Because in 1986, I was taking a class. I was a new recruit to work with doing alcohol assessments at the National Council on Alcoholism because I was a social work student. And they had me read this book. And it's about family roles in alcoholic families, but it could also be basically family roles in any dysfunctional family. I read this book and I was like, that's me. That's my family. And I had been a lost soul. I'd searched throughout my teens and into my 20s, almost into my 30s, for answers in religion and in Christendom. And there's a lot of good answers in religion, but they didn't answer the questions I had about my dysfunction and my family's dysfunction. So I'm just going to read Sharon Wegscheider Cruse's chapter on the lost child. I'm not going to read it all. I'm only going to read about maybe a third of it. And I got to give a commercial for Sharon Wegscheider Cruse. She wrote this book many, many years ago. It was before 1986. I know that. But I got to meet her, and she gave me her card, and she signed it, and she gave me a big hug because I told her, I was crying. I told her, your book got me in recovery. And so she started OnSite, where I encourage you guys to go to get wonderful workshops and wonderful healing opportunities. Okay, so the lost child, these are Sharon Wegscheider Cruse's words. By the time the third child makes his appearance, the plot of the alcoholic or dysfunctional family drama has thickened. The four characters already on stage are intensely involved in it. Unlike the scapegoat before him, this child, like the scapegoat before him, this child also feels like an outsider. Being a lost child is about being an outsider. Unlike the scapegoat, however, he does not try to force his way into the action or resort to some attention-getting tactics or get on the stage in any other way. Instead, he simply retires to the wings. Almost from infancy, he senses the tensions of the drama being enacted around him, but he cannot comprehend the plot. He has arrived in the middle of the play, and no one volunteers to explain what has happened so far. Family members are all too preoccupied to notice his confusions. Should he dare to ask questions, then he risks being abruptly put down. Frank discussion is against the rules in dysfunctional families. Any answers he might receive would only compound his confusion anyway. Any answers that he might, for although the active participants have personally witnessed earlier family events, none of them really understands what's going on. Everybody is just so confused in a dysfunctional family. So the little newcomer finds his way of adapting in situation, and he gets lost. He becomes a loner. He starts looking after his needs himself and staying out of everybody's way. Finding more comfort in privacy of his own company than in the midst of the family chaos, where for all practical purposes, even when he's with the family, he's alone anyway. Everybody welcomes his choice in a family where there's either a narcissist or an alcoholic at center stage, a codependent enabling and propping that parent up. Then there's the family hero's perfectionism and triumphs, the scapegoat's escapades for getting attention. A child who makes no demands is a great source of relief for the family. The lost child's withdrawal can be considered functional for him too, insofar as it protects him from some of the direct negative effects of the family hero and of the scapegoat. But the same protective wall isolates him from whatever positive interaction and communication still exists in the family. In a family where communication among all the members is poor, he is the most out of touch. Do you ever have that feeling of being the most out of touch? Not only did he miss the first part of the drama, but he's off stage and he misses many of the ongoing developments as he grows up ever more confused. When he does occasionally move into the family circle close enough to observe the current state of affairs, he would find himself increasingly a stranger in his own family. Airplane. In my family, part of my lost childness was I stayed out in the garage. I didn't want to be around the family. I needed quiet and isolation. I made myself a little apartment out in the garage. Sometimes I call this role the forgotten child, Sharon Wegscheider writes. Interest in his undertakings, praise his achievements, reassurance for his fears, companionship and affection in his loneliness. None of these necessities of childhood is forthcoming from those who would normally provide them. Nobody is paying attention to this kid because he is so often out of sight. He and his needs are also out of mind. This neglect is rarely by intent, of course, but the lost child is nevertheless carries a message that he's not important, that he does not have much personal worth. Characteristically, lost children blame themselves for not being able to fit into the family, rather than looking for the fault where it really lies in the family system itself. As the child retreats behind his wall of isolationism, he often builds a fantasy world of his own where, for a few worlds, he finds peace and satisfaction. Here is a safe place, secure and predictable within his control. Sometimes it seems more real than the bizarre real world is. So he spends a lot of time in his room, and he plays, he reads. Lost child reads a lot. They pursue a lonesome hobby and they just daydream. While he's very young, he may develop imaginary friends and with whom he feels more at ease than the live playmates, or he may choose a favorite doll or stuffed animal as his special companion and later transfer his affections to his pet. He finds that short-term pleasure can be in solitary indulgences like eating, watching television, or listening to his favorite music. Later he may seek more self-destructive chemicals. In my lost childness, I would watch TV, and I remember just feeling really lonely in a room watching MASH. Remember MASH? Or All in the Family, or the Carol Burnett Show. I felt an emptiness and a loneliness that I filled it up with television. But he cannot remain in this private world forever. As he moves into the larger arenas of school and peer group, his defensive scheme begins to fail him. He finds himself an alien in an everyday world where children from healthy families have been learning to live since infancy. I don't know if there are children from healthy families, actually. He has had little experience in either expressing his own feelings or handling such expressions from others in cooperation or negotiating disputes when cooperation breaks down, in sharing, in defending ownership, and assessing the real value of either material possessions or sensory pleasure. He has little experience in living. He's been lost. He's been frozen in time. In his confusion, he makes many errors in judgment with results that range from ineffectiveness to downright humiliation. Since he has never experienced warmth or human closeness, he's not prepared to make friends and engage in the social give and take of day-to-day school contacts. Yet in the midst of the crowd, withdrawing into himself, he leaves himself feeling lonely, indifferent, and inept. When my work takes me in schools, Sharon writes, I long to reach out to all the lost children that I see there. Though they are quiet and shy, almost fading into the woodwork, anyone familiar with family roles can pick them out. I'm going to be sharing about client, I call her Jessie, and she's from Australia. And it's like, yeah, I want to adopt her. I just feel so heartbroken over her story. And that's what Sharon is mentioning here, that when she would go into school, she could spot the lost children. Hi, Mark. They're noticeable on the playground. The scapegoat and his pals usually take over the playground. I'm more likely to find them singing in the choir or doing a long project for the teacher or reading alone in a corner. As youngsters move into high school, social skills complicated by a blossoming of sexuality begin to assume great importance in their lives. Now the lost child finds himself more lost than ever before. I was really painfully shy, and I remember I was probably about 16, and I told my parents I had a date, and they both sort of smiled and almost high-fived each other. I think they thought I was gay because I'd never had a date before because I was so shy. And they were particularly thrilled to allow me to use the car to go on my date with Brenda Stockdale, was her name. Each human being learns what it means to be a man or a woman from the adults in his family growing up. The same-sex parent provides a lasting model of what he is to be, and the other parent the object of his first important relationships with the person of the opposite sex. These are powerful teachings beginning many years before formal sex education, even before a child is consciously aware of sexual differences. They're powerful, and if they occur, if you have parents there being parents. The lost child has never felt close to either of his parents. He has been too insulated from them to experience this kind of learning. Consequently, he reaches puberty with no clear sense of his own sexual identity and how to relate in a healthy way with those of the opposite sex. As an adolescent, sexuality increasingly colors all aspects of his daily world. He's engulfed by yet another confusion. True to his pattern, he withdraws. He rarely dates, and in his loneliness suffers growing doubts. So that's all I'm going to read from that book. But yeah, I remember that. I remember just always being alone and finding solace. I didn't really feel lonely at that time. Hi, Star. I wanted to show y'all a picture of my family. And so I don't know if you can see the lost child. That's me right there. You see the look on my face there? Just there's the family hero. There's the favored golden child. She became the scapegoat, but I was lost in the shuffle. So I wanted to tell you a little bit of something startling that came from Brene Brown's book, Braving the Wilderness. She mentioned a study. She called it a meta-analysis. And her point was loneliness and being lost is dangerous. When you're a lost child, you will isolate. When you isolate, you'll be lonely. When you're lonely, it's dangerous. So in the book, Brene Brown mentions a meta-analysis of many studies on loneliness by Julie Ann Holt, Timothy Smith, and J. Bradley Layton. And what they came up with was basically they studied various things and gave each one the percentage that you're going to experience an early death. So the first one was air pollution. It has a 5% chance of an early death. Obesity, 20% chance of an early death. Alcoholism, 30% chance. That is a lovely palm tree back there. Thank you. U.S. mail that I always mention on my videos. Alcoholism is 30%. And then loneliness, 45% chance of an early death. You take alcoholism and obesity and add it together, and it's just a little bit more dangerous than the danger of loneliness. Isn't that startling? I thought that was really startling. And Brene Brown said, what many times is behind the isolationism? What is it? It's fear. You know, we fear being rejected. We fear not being one of the cool kids. We fear, being hurt. I'm familiar with the lost child kid. I've referred to myself as sort of a square-headed Charlie Brown. That's what I felt like, because every year and a half we'd move, and as soon as you made friends, you had to up and leave. So let me tell Susan's story. She's somebody that I work with, and so she's a lost child, and recently one of her children started making plans to attend a private school. And in her school system, the kids either go to one private school or the other as they move into high school. One is like super, super ritzy, and one is just ritzy. Frankly, it's more than I could afford to send a kid to. But what is happening is Susan is being triggered because the choice that their family has made is just send them to the ritzy school, not the ritzy school. And that's triggering a sense of not being one of the cool kids, being left out, not being good enough, feeling invisible. Any of y'all ever felt invisible? Feeling on a lesser social rung? And that it's bringing up shame, and it's bringing up lostness, and it's bringing up abandonment issues. Also recently she mentioned that being on social media is torture, because you get on social media and you're a lost child and you find out all the cool stuff everybody else is doing. Recently there was a U2 concert, and all the cool kids in town went to the U2 concert, but she didn't go, and she felt a lot of pain over it. A lot of pain from sort of being left out. When I was in high school, there was some kind of club, I forget what it was. It was just for the boys, and everybody went to it every Wednesday night, and it had been going on halfway through my senior year before I even found out about it. Everybody knew about it. Everybody went. Nobody thought to invite me. And when I went, I loved it. And I sure wish that I would have known about it. So that's some of the wounds of being a lost child. Now, Jessie from Australia, her form of lostness has to do with not having a solid sense of self. So she has a history of being overly influenced and swallowed up by men, by relationships, by probably either addictive or narcissistic men, where everything revolved around them. You know, this is, I guess, the stereotypical codependency of the runaway bride. You know, that scene where she doesn't know how she likes her eggs. You know, she would just eat eggs the way the guy ate eggs, but then she couldn't ever have that true sense of belonging that would lead to a lifelong marriage. So she'd put her sneakers on and run. So Jessie, this week we had a first session, and then she emails me thanking me for the space I made for her and then asking if we're really on next week, next Thursday morning at 9:00, just confirming that, please, can I have that? You get the sense of lack of entitlement. I made the appointment. I was glad to make the appointment. And that appointment Thursday at 9:00 was her appointment. But as a lost child, she was just feeling it out, just to make sure that she was invited to the dance, So Jessie says that in her recovery process, she wants to be strong in the world. And that's the recovery process for a lost child, is to find yourself, to know what way you like your eggs. I was working with another lost child who has been through narcissistic abuse, and she shared something beautiful with me. She's an artist, and she sent me a painting that she did that is just stunningly beautiful. And she said, "You know what, Mark? It's hard going through this narcissistic abuse, but what buoys me and what makes me solid is my art." She's clung to her role and her identity as an artist, and it has given her grounding, and it's made the trauma so much less traumatizing. I've got Zeke, a boxer puppy, over here, and he's wanting to sound in. He's the most adorable dog in the world. So, for any of you lost children out there, I just, again, this Jessie, it's heartbreaking to see so much potential. When you're lost, you don't know where to go. You don't know what you like. You don't, and there isn't the fire to get there. And then you have these people leading you astray. You get led into relationships that take you away from yourself. That's what the message is, from Brene Brown's book, is what is healthy in belonging, in finding your place in the world. It's belonging to yourself. And I've been saying that as a mantra. I belong to me. I know where I belong, and I know who I am. And that's having a solid sense of self. So that's what I had to share today. Get the book, Another Chance by Sharon Wegscheider Cruse. Get the book, Braving the Wilderness by Brene Brown, and learn more about this role of a lost child. It's a real thing, and it really is dangerous, and it really causes a lot of agony. So sorry I wasn't able to chit chat with a lot of y'all. Y'all communicated back and forth with each other, which I love. One of the things that we don't have as people who have PTSD is we don't have a sense of community, and that's what I love that springs up around this YouTube channel, is a sense of support and community. We all want a place where everybody knows your name, and everybody who's a regular on this, we know your name and we know your story, and we welcome people to the channel all the time. So I'm going to get back to my day. Those of you who've asked about Renda, she's feeling better. I have my wife back, and it's lovely. She's energized and feeling better, so that's good. Find yourselves. Find your place in the world. That comes from deep inside your belly. Find yourself a good therapist. Find yourself a community. And build a sense of belonging in the world where you're not lost anymore. You were lost, and now you're going to be found. And you can make a dent in the world because you belong to you. God bless you, folks.